In the history of football, matches have been stopped for many reasons. Rain, floodlights failing, riots, power cuts. But on a Sunday afternoon in Ecuador, in July 2016, a football match was abandoned for a reason that had never happened before in recorded football history. 50,000 bees arrived, and nobody, not the referee, not the coaches, not the beekeeper they eventually called, could do anything about it. This is the story of the day bees became the most powerful force in football, and it happened more than once. Before we get into what happened, a quick clarification. When people hear World Cup match abandoned by bees, they imagine a FIFA World Cup semifinal, 80,000 fans, the whole planet watching. That's not quite what happened. What happened was arguably stranger, and in some ways, more interesting, because it happened in a regular league match. Then it happened again, then again. In 3 different countries, across nearly a decade, football found itself completely powerless against one of nature's smallest creatures. Let's start with the first one, and the worst one. July 17, 2016. Guayaquil, Ecuador. River Plate, Ecuador and Aucas were playing a regular league match at the Estadio Christian Benitez Betancourt. Nothing unusual. A Sunday afternoon game. 10 minutes in, the score was still 0-0. Then the linesman started waving. Not for offside. Not for a foul. He was waving at the sky. A swarm of bees, thousands of them, descended on the stadium from the direction of the stands. Players began swatting at the air, then running, then sprinting for the tunnels. The referee had no protocol for this. There is no page in the FIFA rulebook titled, "What to do when bees attack." He did the only thing that made sense. He suspended the match. The Ecuadorian Football Federation called in a beekeeper. The beekeeper arrived, in full protective gear, smoke equipment, ready. He walked onto the pitch and assessed the situation. Then he left. The bees were too many. Even he couldn't do anything. The match was officially abandoned, not paused, not delayed, abandoned. The Federation issued an official statement confirming the suspension due to, and these are their exact words, the gravity of the attack. The rearranged fixture was played the following Monday. River Plate won 3-0. The bees did not return. But Ecuador wasn't done with bees. 2 years later, Ecuador again, June 2018, a second division match between Liga de Porto Viejo and Manta FC. The bees arrived in the 26th minute. Players went down to the turf immediately. This time they knew the protocol. You don't fight bees, you lie down and wait. The match was paused for several minutes while the swarm passed over the stadium. It resumed. The result stood. But something interesting happened. A journalist covering the match noted it was 2 days before the 2018 FIFA World Cup in Russia was due to begin. His headline, "Even the bees can't wait for the World Cup." Ecuador has now had 2 documented bee invasions in professional football matches. No other country comes close to that record. Scientists have no clear explanation. The vibrations from stadium crowds may disturb nearby hives, the noise, the movement, or maybe it's coincidence. Nobody really knows. December 21, 2019, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. The Uhuru Stadium. A Federation Cup match between Young Africans and Iringa United. 7 minutes into the second half, a swarm of bees entered the stadium from outside. They didn't just pass over the pitch, they attacked. Players hit the ground immediately. Both teams, the referee, the assistant referees, all of them, face down on the grass. Then the bees reached the stands. Fans began running for the exits. People were climbing over seats. The atmosphere went from football match to something else entirely in about 30 seconds. Only one player was injured. A Yanga striker named Ali Matoni Sonso, who was stung and needed to leave the pitch for medical attention. He returned to play after treatment. The match was paused for 10 minutes, then it resumed. Then the bees left, as suddenly as they had arrived. No explanation was ever given for why they entered the stadium that night. No beekeeper was mentioned in any report. The bees simply decided that a Federation Cup match in Dar es Salaam was interesting enough to attend, and then changed their minds. September 3, 2025, Babati, Tanzania, Kwara Stadium. A preseason tournament match between a Nigerian club and a Zanzibar club. The score was 1-1. 78th minute. A swarm of bees emerged from a tree near the stadium. Officials believe the crowd noise and vibrations had disturbed the hive. Within seconds, the insects were over the pitch. Match officials immediately ordered every person on the field to lie flat. No arguing, no questioning. Flat on the ground, face down, arms overhead. Players obeyed. Referees obeyed. The assistant referee went down. A television cameraman abandoned his equipment and lay down next to it. Substitutes ran under the dugout bench and stayed there. The footage went viral within hours. ESPN-FC shared it. Millions of views. Comments flooded in. One viewer wrote, "Football in Tanzania turned into WWE, the whole stadium hitting the floor for bees instead of goals." Another, "Nature doesn't care about your football schedule." Nobody was stung. The bees dispersed after several minutes. The match resumed. The Nigerian club scored a late winner. Final score, 2-1. The bees were not credited with an assist. So why does this keep happening? Scientists who have studied the phenomenon, and yes, people have studied this, point to several factors. First, crowd noise. A full stadium generates a sustained vibration that can travel through the ground and air. Bees are extremely sensitive to vibration. A hive near a stadium may interpret this as a threat or disturbance and swarm defensively. Second, geography. Ecuador and Tanzania both have climates and ecosystems where large bee populations exist near human settlements. The proximity of hives to stadiums is simply higher in these regions. Third, timing. Most incidents happen in afternoon or early evening matches, peak foraging time for bees. If a swarm is already in motion and encounters the noise and movement of a stadium, it may be drawn in rather than away. None of these explanations are definitive. Experts at AfriZoom, who covered the 2025 Tanzania incident, noted that unusual weather patterns that week may have played a role. The report also acknowledged that nobody knows for certain. What we know for certain is this: the FIFA rulebook has no official protocol for a bee invasion. There is no page, no clause, no emergency procedure. The referee in Ecuador in 2016 made a judgment call. He abandoned the match. That decision was correct, and it was unprecedented. When I first read about the Ecuador match, that a beekeeper arrived, assessed the situation, and then simply left because there was nothing he could do, I actually laughed. And then I read the official statement from the Ecuadorian Football Federation. The gravity of the attack. For bees, I didn't believe it was real. I had to check 3 sources before I accepted it. Football has this quality. The moments nobody writes into the script turn out to be the moments people remember longest. The beekeeper who couldn't help. The players lying flat in Tanzania while a camera filmed them. The Nigerian striker who scored the winner after surviving a bee invasion with 11 minutes left. If this is the kind of football story you want more of, subscribe. And drop a comment. Which is the strangest reason you've ever seen a match stopped? I guarantee yours is less strange than a beekeeper walking onto a pitch and then giving up. The World Cup is happening right now. Or maybe it already ended. Maybe you're watching this 6 months later and you already know who won. Either way, somewhere in one of those stadiums, there are probably bees living in the walls. I'm not joking. Who do I think wins? France or Brazil? The squad depth is just different. If you're watching this after the final, drop the winner in the comments. Don't explain it, just the country. One word. Let's see how good my prediction was. Subscribe, because the strangest stories in football aren't happening on the pitch, they're happening around it.